Right, we seem to have gone completely full circle in Leicester City's attempt to get themselves a new manager, with Marti Cifuentes, the former QPR boss, now the front runner, or should I say, again, the front runner, as reported by the Telegraph and Talk Sport yesterday. And I say again because it feels like a couple of months ago, with Leicester destined to go down from the Premier League, that Cifuentes was kind of being lined up to do this gig next season. And a lot has happened, but seemingly nothing has happened. And I guess it's the latest kind of disorganised episode at Leicester where, things have not been run in the most, well, with the most joined up thinking in recent years, have they? Right, let me try and walk you through this, because Cifuentes was at QPR, and I believe it was the West Brom job that he potentially wanted to go and do, and his people were agitating for, allegedly. And QPR basically said to him, well, if you don't want to be our manager, whatever, bit of a fallout, but we're due a load of compensation if another club or federation takes you. So you can go on gardening leave, and we'll collect our compensation as and when you take a new job, rather than a sacking or a mutual consent, etc. Since then, I think there's been an agreement between Cifuentes and QPR, basically to say, right, take me off gardening leave, you can keep your compensation rights, and apparently Cifuentes is willing to waive his end of any compensation, but QPR would still be due something if, as, and when he takes a new job. Now, Leicester were doomed to relegation like Ipswich and Southampton very early, but we had this weird silence at the end of the season with Ruud van Nistelrooy, where it was kind of an open secret that he wasn't going to be the manager, but nothing really was announced. No plans for this season coming, or no, sacking announcement with Van Nistelrooy, which could have been done just ages and ages ago, but it rumbled on through the end of the season. And then I think Rudy probably went on holiday, didn't he? And then came back and then was finally sacked. And during this time, Marti Cifuentes was pretty well heavily linked with taking the Leicester job. But then that all died down. Leicester fired Van Nistelrooy, and there was some arguments that because of the Premier League sanction that was given against Leicester at the end of the season, and this idea that there may be a potential EFL sanction coming, that things were a bit complex at Leicester and they wanted to iron all of that out before they did the managerial stuff. I'm not entirely sure why you couldn't have gone and got on with it, but there you go. Here we are, 9th of July, still nothing happening. Season will have started in 1 month's time. 8th of August, the first game is going to be played. So they are cutting it a little bit fine here, Leicester. But we believe interviews have been taking place with the likes of Gary O'Neill, who, where was he? He was at Wolves and Bournemouth, or Bournemouth and Wolves, whichever way round. Yeah, Bournemouth and Wolves into last season. So did an all right job in the Premier League, but things fell apart a bit at the end at Wolves. Sean Dyche, who I've kind of got this feeling is a Premier League manager, but went in at Everton, and he did a good job on that podcast he did with Neville and Keane and Ian Wright of basically putting it all on the club and saying it was an impossible job. But I don't know, is the time now that he has to drop to the Championship to get his next job? Certainly be a good get. Chris Wilder, which would have been an interesting one because he's literally just come out of Sheffield United, where they finished in third with 92 points on pitch before a deduction, and led the playoff final with about 15-20 minutes to go. So he's just had a very, very near miss there. But despite all of that, and apparently, as I say, interviews taking place, it now looks like we've gone all the way around in a circle, and it is Cifuentes who's going to be the guy. There were talks about Danny Rohl as well, who's kind of inexorably linked with Marti Cifuentes. I'll explain why when we talk about Cifuentes. Apparently, that's too complicated to do because a gain of handcuffs and I think big compensation into the millions for Rohl to be paid to Sheffield Wednesday if he leaves. However, Sheffield Wednesday are not in the greatest shape at the moment, and I'm completely speculating here. People haven't been paid, but maybe if you had a massive compensation on one particular member of staff, you might make sure that that guy got paid so you kept your rights to compensation. I'm completely speculating about that, but yeah, if you were protecting a particular investment that was worth a lot of money to you, maybe you would do that. So I don't know about the complications there, but I suspect it's something of that nature with Danny Rohl that's made it not possible. So those are all the names. What else is up here? Bo Svensson as well is the only other name I can see on my screen over here. So John Percy said yesterday, admired by the Leicester board for some time and has held talks. So let's focus in on Cifuentes, who I like a lot. We'll talk about whether Leicester's a bit of a hospital pass next season anyway, but Cifuentes took a massive hospital pass at pretty much the same time as Danny Rohl did, not last season, season before in the Championship with QPR, where Gareth Ainsworth had been there and they tried to do the up and at 'em direct kind of Wickham style with a former QPR player, and it failed absolutely miserably. And you can probably find plenty of clips of me on this channel saying QPR are doomed. You know, what chance have they got of staying up? They are miles and miles off it. Well, Cifuentes did a superb job. Actually finished 18th with a high tide as well. Remember, Birmingham got relegated with 50 points and Rangers got 56 points. And it was kind of the story of the season was Danny Rohl and Marti Cifuentes going into these jobs where everything just looked for all the world like the teams were going to be relegated. And he got them out of dodge. And I suppose the football style, it was mainly based on the pressing. I think that was the thing that QPR did better than everybody else. And look, complete admitting bias here. Well, the Leicester fans will remember because they were in the title race as well at the time. But a huge win for QPR against Leeds was kind of the signature win, and it was when the automatic promotion momentum really swung in Ipswich's favour at that point. This is not a video about Ipswich, of course, but I've managed to shoehorn them in there. But at that point, you're saying about Cifuentes and Rohl, look, these guys have done fantastic jobs in the Championship. They've been able to go into seemingly very, very bad situations and really get a tune out of those clubs. Last season, a little bit sketchy. They landed on 56 points again in the end, Rangers, in 15th place. But they were struggling in the first half of the season. Dare I say, a bit of the Lee Johnsons in there, a little bit streaky. But I'm sure if QPR fans are in the comments here, they'll say, well, there's mitigating circumstances there. QPR isn't necessarily the easiest club to manage. I don't know how well Cifuentes has handled himself here in terms of this situation and the gardening leave and the fallout. That's maybe not for me to say. QPR fans will know a lot more about that than I. So again, I'll defer to their superior knowledge in the comments, and really only the people in the room and the agents and whatnot know exactly what has gone on there. But it doesn't really cover anybody in glory, does it, when we've got these compensation issues and gardening leave's been done and you can go, but we're not sacking you, and then it dribbles on over into, well, halfway through the next close season. So I think to close on Cifuentes, I think he's a good manager. He's young. He seems to be this classic. Maybe I'm describing Corberon here, who was at West Brom, obviously in Huddersfield, wasn't he? Kind of intense, fairly quiet but simmering European guy. Are they both Spanish, Corberan and Cifuentes? I guess they are, aren't they? So yeah, obviously Corberan's football is a bit more defensive. I think everyone would agree than Cifuentes. A little bit more front foot, a little bit more aggressive, and certainly if you're managing Leicester, a year one parachute team, that would be the expectation. So I think he's a good manager. I am reading a tweet here from the TAIE podcast. I don't quite know what that is, but they make a fair point. Another candidate added to the ever-growing list, all of which have completely different styles. What great planning from the second worst run club in the country. Who's the worst? Sheffield Wednesday, are they going with at the moment? I don't know. You tell me. That's a fair point, isn't it? Dyche compared to Wilder, compared to Cifuentes, compared to O'Neill. It is a fair point that if those are the candidates, it's like, oh man, what is the plan here? But in deference to Leicester's owners, who are not the most popular at the moment, there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, we're going to do a reset and we're looking at these possibilities. Not every club, I guess, has to go, oh, we're going to play this way for the next 10 years and we're never going to change our style or whatever. So, and what about the Leicester job? Because it's I've used the word complex a few times in this video to describe situations. That's certainly going to be the case at Leicester. We've had big financial problems since, well, really the back end of the Premier League and this idea of paying a top 6, top 8 budget and then getting relegated, which is a dreadful, dreadful performance on pitch. And maybe it was a top 6, 8 budget because they were overpaying. I don't know, for quality. So you can look at it both ways in that regard. And then we had that championship season where, yes, Maresca comes in and they score a lot of points, but off the pitch, just complete craziness with the refusal to submit accounts or go under a business plan, being in this Bermuda Triangle of not being in jurisdiction and then getting promoted. And then fair play to the lawyer guy, DeMarco, for getting them out of what seemed like an impossible situation with the jurisdiction argument and the poorly worded law from the EFL and the Premier League. But now it looks like maybe there's some chickens coming home to roost, and a possible sanction that frankly could have been 2 seasons ago or last season may be coming, and there may be a couple actually. So I'm very interested in the tension between Leicester being a club that normally blows the Championship away, has a year one parachute payment, although could they get one of these fee restriction, soft embargo type things that we've seen go on at Hull and Sheffield Wednesday? That would be more damaging, I think, than a points deduction, wouldn't it? If you get a points deduction, and everyone's raised the example of Sheffield United, who are a year one parachute team last year. A year one parachute? Yeah, they were, weren't they? Weren't year 2 this year. So. Playing Bristol City in the playoffs, having scored 24 more points than the Robins, and the argument being, it would have needed to be a 25-point deduction for that particular year one parachute team to miss the playoffs. So, yeah, you tell me whether, what the sanctions are, or whether if you said to Marti Cifuentes, right, you get the Leicester job, you're being deducted 6 points, but you can trade how a year one parachute team normally would. I think he'd go, okay, I'll take it. I might not be able to get top 2. I'll give it a good go, but I can sure as hell win the playoffs with that club, that squad, and that set of circumstances. So I'm just interested in what the situation is at Leicester. And I suppose if you're a manager, you kind of want to know, are they going to be under some kind of fee restriction, or is it going to be a points deduction before you take the job? Or is Mr. Cifuentes, or whoever it's going to be if it does become more chaotic, just happy to get back in there, and manager's got to work, and, maybe it's one hard season, maybe you get promoted in the second season. But that is for sure the expectation, A, with Leicester historically in the Championship, and B, as we've said a zillion times on this channel, with every parachute team, the expectation is top 2, top 4, a solid challenge. And look what happened to Chris Wilder. 20 minutes away from doing it, 92 points on the board without the deduction through the season. Sacked, gone. So maybe the expectation is literally just promotion, tick, not promotion, anything else, cross, get out, done. Let me know your thoughts on Marti Cifuentes potentially being the next Leicester manager and that tension at Leicester and just how chaotic things have been now over a long while at Leicester City. If you want a little bit more on that particular situation, have a look up there where I will link my chat with the great Kieran Maguire of the Price of Football podcast, who can talk in far greater detail on the situation for Leicester going into next season as it pertains to potential sanctions and finances and all of that jargon.